Good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining our brand new webinar, Your SIEM's Darkest Secrets. Today we have a very special presenter. We've got Joe Burtnick, who is Contact's Chief Technology Officer. Joe's been in the cybersecurity space for over 20 years, so we're thrilled to have him man this webinar today. And without further ado, I will hand straight over to Joe.
Thank you very much, Daisy. Appreciate everybody joining today. Let me just start my video here and we'll be able to crack on. So one of the things that we hear from a lot of customers when we talk about security monitoring is, unfortunately, this deep, dark secret that we kind of tell ourselves across the organization. And that is that we have all the basics covered, and if worse comes to worse, our disaster recovery plan will cover the bases, if you will, and really make sure that we can have a fallback position. But as many organizations have seen, this is not the reality of what happens in the real world. From the attacks that we saw over the last few years, from WannaCry to BA, if you will, kind of the traditional approaches to different types of attacks, to most recently the SolarWinds attack, the threat surfaces that we have to cover, the need for us to be able to actively and proactively monitor our environment becomes really crucial. And SolarWinds is a special case because it exposed a whole new threat surface that we weren't thinking about before, the supply chain, if you will. And the customers that were protected in those environments were ones that had active threat monitoring, active investigation capabilities. Those that didn't, unfortunately, suffered from those attacks and breaches. And so the need is never more clear for organizations to really get a better handle around what they're doing around security monitoring and how they're using their SIEM technology. Because ultimately, the DR plan may not cover it. In many organizations, you're looking at catastrophic loss, being able to not operate for weeks on end. But with security monitoring in place, you can be on the front foot. You can potentially have visibility across your state and be able to sleep at night. So with that being said, one of the things we want to do is get a little bit of a questionnaire out to everyone about the ways that you're handling security monitoring today. So if you would, please feel free to answer the question in the audience poll there on the screen. We'll get a sense of how people are sorting through some of this today and ultimately, what's driving security monitoring within their organization. And it looks like we're starting to get just about everybody with sharing their information. I think I can broadcast the results and share some of this with everyone. But a good mix of organizations either using an internal process really without a tool set or a solution in place, to those that have an internal SIEM solution. Some even have an external SOC. So good balance of approaches to try to solve this problem. And as we see in many cases, one of the biggest challenges, biggest drivers for this is risk of security incident. And so that's definitely confirmed by everyone, as well as the need to be compliant and have business, meet business objectives. So with that said, let's drop back into the slides. And what I wanted to do is kind of expand on this a bit further. And we've identified, if you will, 5 common pitfalls that organizations have when doing security monitoring. And the first one that really is, when we go into an organization and say, what do you have for security monitoring? Most organizations will answer security monitoring as driven by PCI compliance or some other regulation that we need to adhere to. But the problem with those is that when compliance drives monitoring, the only requirement necessary is to meet the compliance objectives, which in many cases are very minimal. So many organizations are even ISO 27001 compliant, they're PCI compliant, because they have a monitoring process in place. but at no point does compliance ever look at that and say, is it effective? Is it really protecting the assets that are at risk? Yes, you might be ticking all the boxes, but compliance usually is a very low watermark. And so organizations look to go beyond basic compliance for security monitoring. They start to see that the compliance requirements were very limited. They had small scope to the organization and really didn't derive great outcomes. And so being able to move beyond that thinking, I think, is really crucial for organizations to avoid, if you will, this first pitfall for security monitoring. The second challenge we see with organizations is that they want to do security monitoring. Of course, they don't have the resources to be able to have dedicated teams just doing security. And so what they do is decide to forward all of the alerts from the AV products to firewalls, et cetera, to the help desk. Now, sometimes these might be aggregated by some sort of logging or event management system, but in many cases, you really lean on those products to forward those alerts to you. And it puts the help desk in a very difficult position because, first and foremost, they're not specialists. So in many cases, what the help desk is trained to do is simply unlock an endpoint or quarantine a virus or potentially do something as profound as rolling back the endpoint, if you will. They really don't know what they're looking for. So they're just simply saying, okay, incident comes in, how do I respond to it? This is the next steps based on a run book. They really don't have the ability to look more broadly across the organization, see potentially where an issue might be very low priority or medium priority, but it's the aggregate of issues that are across potentially the endpoint, Office 365, Azure AD, et cetera, that identifies that you have a real security risk at place. And so ultimately, we're putting, as I said, putting the help desk in a very difficult position because we're leaning on them to monitor security, but they're only as good as the tools that are providing information to them and how well those tools are joined up. And so they're always in a very difficult position to respond. And ultimately, organizations, in all practice and reality, fall back to a position where they're just simply responding based on a run book. And so there's no ability to really be on the front foot. You'll see a very small number of incidents or a lot of noise, but really the help desk is just not trained to be able to support that. And so that's the next, if you will, pitfall we see organizations experiencing. Now, if you do put security monitoring in place, many organizations will turn it on, immediately start to get logs ingested in from a few key portions of the organization, but then the logs start to fill up. Deploying it within 30 days, 90 days, having 5,000 events that you have to respond to just means that you're going to turn off all the noise. And it comes down to not having a solution that's well-tuned, well-managed, really optimizing for a term I love, which is signal to noise ratio, to be able to ensure that the alerts are operating effectively, that the alerts are informative, that we can investigate and correlate alerts from different sources so that we can take that 5,000 and turn it into something far more manageable. Well, more importantly, tune out the 5,000 because in many cases that may be noise. One of the challenges that we see with a lot of organizations is they buy a SIEM solution, they have it sitting on a shelf, it's collecting information, all of that's coming together, but there's no real analysis. There's no long-term, if you will, care and feeding. And so what ultimately happens is that you have a massive amount of alerts coming in, things are not being able to be prioritized effectively, and that just leads to the whole system being only focused on just the very critical alerts. It also means that the whole project starts to drag, which really leads into our fourth pitfall, which is that in many cases, you'll deploy a solution, but it's not been managed really well. And so effectively, it's not reporting on the whole of the estate. Maybe only portions of the estate were rolled out. Because of the overabundance of alerts, maybe you didn't continue the process of tuning. And so ultimately, you're sitting in a situation where you have a solution, it's sitting on the shelf. Fortunately, it's not well managed. And when you really start to dive into it, it's not providing real information that could enable a team if you had that team in place. And so it really provides an area where organizations can really struggle to be able to understand what's going on in their environment, understand and get visibility across their estate. So ultimately, are you able to sleep well at night? And the answer is no, because we don't have real good visibility into the organization. And even if we've made attempts at pulling that information together, what we have really is not delivering. And the final pitfall that we see a lot of organizations coming into is one around budget. And it's a very realistic one. It's not just a matter of prioritize, not just a matter of the cost of the SIEM by itself, which is a matter we'll get to in a second, but it's also a matter of priority. If you're trying to focus on whether or not you upgrade your endpoint solution or your firewalls or those challenges, you've really got to have a justification for why you want to spend additional resources on security monitoring. Additionally, it's not just about buying technology. It's about the people and the processes that can support it. And so does your organization have the ability to have the right level of coverage so that the security events and incidents are being reacted to? Be able to bring on specialized talent to investigate incidents, people that really know the tool set, know how hackers think, are able to track that incident down, understanding the depth and breadth of that incident so that you can really be able to take advantage of a solution. And so there's a number of components that really go together for developing, for implementing a solution. And that cost for many organizations is, typically 50,000, 150,000 pounds. Pretty sizable outlay, especially if you don't know what the outcomes are going to be around that. Now, luckily, there have been some changes in the market, some approaches to technology that make this, that address some of these challenges. But as you're looking at it, the ability to move from, having a large capital outlay to something that allows you to have a pay-as-you-go model becomes really attractive. And luckily for us, while these pitfalls are very common, and we see organizations deploying security monitoring and really not getting the results they want to see, there's a lot of changes in the market. The technology is improving. So technology is able to allow us to have better coverage across threat surfaces. We're able to consolidate technology so that we're spending less in other areas so that we can be able to really get information together and get that single pane of glass that so many organizations want to see for security. And the approaches to security are evolving. We're moving very much to the cloud. And as a result, those cloud consumption models become options for how we can potentially address these. But the key is being able to, first and foremost, acknowledge that the disaster recovery plan is not going to get us there. And then from there, being able to look at these 5 pitfalls and say, are we as an organization, really getting the right information from our estate? Are we logging and collecting it? Are we looking at the whole of the estate, not just our compliance initiatives, if you will? And when we're pulling that information together, do we have the right people and the right intelligence so that what we're reacting to is really crucial for our business? And so, as we look forward, we want to paint a picture of what could a better way look like for many organizations. The ability to, as I mentioned earlier, sleep soundly at night, knowing that you have the organization monitored. Of course, there are always going to be security risks out there, but knowing you're on the front foot, being able to worry about whether or not a data breach is going to impact massively across the organizations because you have that monitor in place, you're doing proactive threat detection, you're being able to leverage your team and potentially outside resources to really bring the right intelligence, the right investigation capability to your organization so that you can ensure that as security monitoring is being utilized and the incidents are being discovered, that not only are you reacting and responding to them very effectively, but more importantly, that's advising your process so that you can be again on the front foot in proactively looking for threats. And tying that back to some of the breaches that have happened across BA, across SolarWinds, across even WannaCry, the organizations that were on the front foot were dramatically less impacted, if not impacted at all, because they were able to respond quickly. And that really is key to security moving forward. And the threat landscape we're dealing with is being able to have that agility. being able to be, if you will, on the front foot, being able to react to the threats that we see in a highly automated way so that our organization can really prioritize the most critical aspects of security and focus on delivering outcomes around those. And it's not just a technology problem. It's how do we extend our teams? In many cases, organizations will have one person dedicated to security. It might be spread across 2 or 3 people, but ultimately that's very operational. Being able to have a team that can focus on threat investigation, that can provide security advice and support. That's really crucial to being able to give your team the agility to react in these different incidents, investigations, and most importantly, having the ability to respond and recover from that so your organization gets back to an operating state as quickly as possible. And the right partner can make a world of difference. Most organizations can't staff out the 5 to 10 people that are all that would be required to really staff a security operations center. But with a partner, you can be able to offload some of that or even have a fully managed service that can deliver on those. And remember that when the SIEM or security monitoring platform is put in place, that platform is only as good as the technology that feeds the data to it. And so we can mine logs and we can get visibility across the whole of the estate. But where we have the right technology in place that is able to be really informative, ability to provide really high quality information into a SOC or a SIEM service, then you have a solution that really provides much better outcomes for your organization. And it's a couple of the key, if you will, buying criteria that I'm a big fan of. First and foremost is that the solution is cloud-based, because it's going to make it easier to exchange data, to support your organization as it evolves. And so having that embedded in the cloud as opposed to an application that you're deploying makes tons of sense. Additionally, where the technology is not just protecting, but also combines that embedded protection with detection and response capability, it can be really profound for helping organizations be able to investigate things more fully, be able to understand what's occurring across the incident. So it's not just that AV stops something, but from there we can investigate further because we have detection and response capabilities. And a lot of these different platform technologies embed these together. Of course, all of these technologies to really enable a security operations team should support active threat hunting. Everything from having automation to be able to do data enrichment. So when an incident occurs, we can go do lookups across multiple applications, pull an enriched set of data together that really helps SOC analysts manage the incident well and inform all of their decisions. And so the technology that underpins your SOC is really crucial to being able to deliver better outcomes, to be able to provide that capability. And so think of this as a longer strategy, if you will, around how you really enable and embed security across the whole of your estate and make it much easier for a SOC solution to deliver great outcomes, feed it better data, if you will, and ultimately allow some of the new technologies and AI, automation, and machine learning to do a much better job in delivering security, investigation, and insight. Now at Contact, we offer a solution around this we call Cyber Defense Center. Cyber Defense Center is a package set of managed services to help customers address security monitoring using our team of threat investigators and analysts. We weave together a number of different technologies. At its core is Azure Sentinel, which is a cloud-based SOC solution based in Azure that allows us to be able to get great visibility across the whole of the estate and enable all of our threat hunting and SOC investigation use cases. We combine that technology with other platforms, such as perimeter protection from Zscaler, endpoint protection through ATP Defender or SentinelOne, as well as perimeter protection and network protection with Vectra, and finally, continuous threat investigation with Tenable. And by weaving these technologies together into a completely integrated managed service, we're able to offer a turnkey solution for customers for security monitoring. And Contact, as a partner, is a gold certified Microsoft partner. And what we are able to deliver with Cyber Defense Center is a new offering based on a new platform with Microsoft, with Sentinel, but it's been delivered and supported by a team that has over 15 years in delivering NOC and SOC services and operates 24/7 in a multi-stage team that has both frontline responders as well as a backline investigation and threat hunters. And that dedicated team of threat hunters and investigators is so crucial for not only ensuring that incidents are properly responded to, but also making sure that you're on the front foot for security. Being able to do monthly threat investigation workshops where we look at the threat landscape, the challenges within your organization, the quality of information coming across the various applications that you have, pull all that together so that on a month-by-month basis, you understand what's going on in the threat landscape, and again, how to stay on the front foot when it comes to security. Of course, we are a full-service Gold Microsoft partner, which means that not only do we have the security expertise to provide that trusted advisor, if you will, around security, but we also have NOC and implementation services to help you remediate or implement new security solutions within your organization. And with that being said, Daisy, would you like to come back on? I think we've got a couple of different pieces before we turn it over to a bit of Q&A.
Perfect. Thank you, Joe, for that. Well, actually, what we're going to do is we will do Q&A first, because I know you guys have probably got some burning questions. So in the kind of lower left corner, we've actually got a live chat box that attendees, you're able to enter your questions in directly. If you pop them in there, Joe, you'll be able to read those, or I can read those out to you, and we'll be able to answer them live for you guys now. Looks like we've already got one pop up there.
Definitely, and sorry about Boydcam dropping off there. So we turned that back on as well. And the first question is about Azure Sentinel and whether it's just for Azure environments or does it support the rest of the estate. And great question, because Azure Sentinel is probably without a doubt the most optimal solution for monitoring Azure environments, because it can understand and go deep within things like Office 365, Azure AD, pulling information from Azure Security Center. And so its capabilities there are second to none. But it is a cloud-delivered and cloud-based SIEM solution. And so with Azure AD, like you would have with comparable cloud offerings from Splunk Cloud or Logarithm Cloud as an example, it's a cloud-based solution that can take security data from a wide range of products and technologies. It does offer deep discounts, if you will, and you don't pay for any of your Azure data coming in, but it has over, I believe, 135 connectors now available for it, a number of them that we see within the interface. They're able to easily connect to a wide range of applications, both on-prem across other cloud services, everything from AWS and Google Cloud to a wide range of security products. Everybody's kind of jumping on the Azure Sentinel bandwagon and making sure that not only can they collect data through syslog and Ceph and traditional means, but there's specialized connectors that really enrich the data that you can see with Azure Sentinel from the cloud. So while it is in the cloud, definitely an Azure specialist, it is a wide-ranging SIEM solution that can support every environment. Next question. How easy or difficult is it to move from my existing SIEM provider to something like Microsoft? Well, it really depends on the processes that you may have in place. Now, if you have a long-standing relationship with your SIEM provider and you developed a wide range of use cases, those would all be transitioned, and that may take a little bit longer. But for many organizations, we see that we're able to transition them from their existing logging technology over to Azure Sentinel in a matter of 30 to 60 days. So one of the things we've seen with Azure Sentinel, because it uses a connector approach to pull data from all Azure estate components, it's got the ability to reach into a number of different security apparatus, as well as take your existing logging syslog and Ceph collectors and simply forward that data to now Azure Sentinel. It makes it very easy for us to transition many customers. Of course, we'll look at those additional use cases and create a deployment plan for making sure that all of those are covered either on day one or quickly after. Next question, can you tell us a bit more about the threat hunting? Is this a standard feature of our service? And first and foremost, of course, threat hunting is central to what we do for customers. And if you're looking at any partner, I would say that making sure that partner has a dedicated team that's actively doing threat hunting. Our team uses the MITRE attack framework as our approach and methodology for looking at different attack surfaces, attack vectors, and it is kind of industry standard. So we want to make sure that we follow those approaches because they really help us ensure that we're looking at all the different threat surfaces and being able to hunt for potential threats and monitor for different suspicious activities that might be indicators of compromise very effectively. Next question, is the cost model based on events per second or something else? No, actually, with Azure Sentinel, it doesn't have an MPS or EPS model. It actually is very similar to Splunk Cloud, which is based on log ingestion per day. And so within Azure Sentinel, the pricing is essentially how much gig, if you will, of log ingestion that's going to be occurring per day. Those logs are maintained for 90 days. Within the solution, and from there we will simply tune and manage those log sources, but it's gigabytes per day is the metric that's used.
And it is helpful. Last question, yeah, I think I might be able to answer in the next part actually, if we haven't got any more. Oh, we do actually have one after that. I'll answer the next part about the recording. Joe, if you want to take the one after that.
Yes. Was there any negative or positive impact of the machine learning when improving cybersecurity threat analysis? Well, in many cases, machine learning always has positive outcomes because it's what we design it to do, right? The biggest challenge I see with machine learning is when the data being fed into it's not very good quality. And so machine learning by its nature is looking for anomalies in data, anomalies in information. If you overwhelm a machine learning algorithm with a bunch of noise, it can't work effectively. And so when we see negative outcomes where machine learning is advising behaviors that don't make sense, it's identifying things that are false positive, false negative at an overly high rate, that really comes down to bad data going into many of those algorithms. The quality of the analytics that you have, especially with Azure Sentinel, because it uses the Azure Analytics Workspace as its core data repository and is able to leverage all of Azure's AI and machine learning capability to investigate that information. So again, lots of powerful capabilities, but those tools can only be effective as what you feed them, if you will. Thank you very much.
Looks like we've actually just got two more come through as well, Joe, if you want to take those.
Unfortunately, the text is quite small, so I have to stare at the screen a bit. The second question is, do you support HE? Tim, if you would you expand on that? There's a couple of different versions of HE, I might imagine. So if you could, that'd be great. And then the follow-up question, are you able to provide hands-on demos? Of course, yes. We do have some webinars that we've already recorded that show live demos of us doing both threat investigation as well as Azure Sentinel, but connect with your sales team and we'd be more than happy to set up something more bespoke.
Lovely. And Tim has specified HE being university campus environments.
Yes, so being able to support university and campus environments, able to be done within Azure Sentinel. There's a wide range of security controls and logs that can be done. Of course, one of the aspects of monitoring those environments is protecting information that may be related or segregating data that might be related to students. Of course, that can be provided within the application as well. There are some special use cases there, and there's a couple of white papers Microsoft's already provided on that. So we can dive a bit deeper on that one for you, Tim.
Lovely. And we'll just take this last question as well. What would you recommend for endpoints, Defender, ATP, or third party?
Well, it really depends on the environment. Defender ATP is a great solution. It's already integrated into Microsoft. And if you're going very much around an E5 license. There's a lot of pulling that through that makes tons of sense. There's an amazing number of capabilities within Azure Sentinel to integrate and leverage ATP Defender. We also recommend another third-party solution, Sentinel-1. Now, the reason for that is that Sentinel-1 has some deep threat investigation and threat hunting capabilities that go beyond what ATP Defender provides. And we're able to get the same kind of automation and data enrichment. And so where we want to go deeper with security and threat investigation, we'll use Sentinel-1. Of course, it really comes down to the environment. And whether you're using one of those tools or even another third party, making sure you've got great data coming in, making sure the right connectors are in place so that we're getting enriched data and not just core log information, if you will, and the ability as well to have managed threat response capabilities so that not only can we detect something, but we may be able to automate the threat response and really close the window for that security risk within your organization. Thank you so much. Daisy?
Lovely, great. Thanks for that, Joe. Tim actually almost pointed on it himself, but you will actually soon receive an email which will include an on-demand link for this webinar. Along with the on-demand link, you'll also receive a link to a quick 3-question survey. This is just so that we can get your thoughts on what you'd like us to cover in future webinars. For every survey that's completed, we will actually donate £20 to support the charity Fair Share. The organisation itself provides over 1 million meals a week to vulnerable people in the UK. And then we also want to give a quick shout out to a webinar that we've got coming up this month as well, which is the Vision and Future for SD-WAN, which we will be in partnership with Fortinet for, which you will receive an email invitation to shortly as well. But that about ends this webinar for us. If you have any other questions that weren't answered in the Q&A, or you want any more information regarding SIEMs or other services that Joe has pointed out within the webinar today, then please don't hesitate to get in contact with us. The contact details are on the screen for you there, and we would be more than happy to help or advise you any further. But other than that, thank you to everybody for attending today and have a great day.
Thank you.